If a single missile had missed its target that week, the Pacific might have ignited. In March 1996, ballistic missiles tore through the sky and crashed into the waters surrounding Taiwan, sending a message that echoed far beyond the strait. Beijing intended to intimidate. It intended to shape an election. It intended to redraw psychological boundaries in the region. But what happened next shifted the entire balance of power. Because when the United States responded, it did not send a statement. It sent carriers, nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, escorted by cruisers, destroyers, and submarines, began moving toward the Taiwan Strait with deliberate calm. And when they entered those waters, they carried with them more than steel and aircraft. They carried the full weight of global naval supremacy. The Third Taiwan Strait Crisis did not begin as a naval confrontation. It began as political signaling. Taiwan was preparing for its first direct presidential election, a milestone in its democratic evolution. Beijing viewed the process as a provocation, fearing it would formalize separation from mainland authority. To influence the political climate, China conducted a series of military exercises and ballistic missile tests in close proximity to Taiwanese waters. The missiles were not aimed at cities but at perception. The objective was psychological pressure. However, psychological pressure has limits when confronted by operational capability. At the time, the People's Liberation Army Navy was still in transition. It was modernizing, expanding, and studying foreign naval doctrines, but it remained largely a regional force. Its operational emphasis centered on coastal defense and limited blue water projection. China did not possess an aircraft carrier. It lacked integrated carrier aviation. Its surface combatants were improving, but not yet capable of sustained long-range power projection comparable to the United States Navy. Submarines existed in number, but experience operating in contested blue water environments remained limited. Logistics chains capable of sustaining large fleets far from shore were underdeveloped. When a missile test occurred, Washington evaluated the escalation risk not only in political terms, but in strategic credibility. If regional intimidation went unanswered, the message would reverberate beyond Taiwan, across Japan, South Korea, and every Pacific ally reliant on American security guarantees. The response was calculated, not emotional. The USS Independence Carrier Battle Group was ordered toward the region. Shortly after, the USS Nimitz Carrier Battle Group followed. The movement of those carriers was routine. That routine was the message. Each carrier strike group functioned as a floating ecosystem of power. At its center, a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier capable of sustained operations without refueling for years. Surrounding it, guided missile cruisers equipped with advanced radar and air defense systems, destroyers optimized for anti-submarine warfare, attack submarines operating beneath the surface as invisible guardians, and supply vessels ensuring logistical endurance. Above the decks, fighter aircraft capable of achieving air superiority within minutes of launch. This was not symbolic deployment. It was escalation control through dominance. When USS Nimitz transited the Taiwan Strait itself, the signal was unmistakable. The United States was asserting freedom of navigation through contested waters, reinforcing that regional intimidation would not redefine maritime boundaries. China lacked the means to directly challenge that movement. It did not yet possess the anti-ship ballistic missile systems that would later form the backbone of its anti-access strategy. It lacked real-time, over-the-horizon targeting capabilities necessary to threaten carrier strike groups operating at range. Its Air Force did not possess the integrated support systems required to project sustained force against a fully operational American carrier formation. The imbalance was structural. For Beijing, the realization was gradual but decisive. American naval supremacy was not based solely on fleet size. It was based on decades of operational experience, integrated command structures, global logistics networks, and technological maturity. Carrier operations require synchronized doctrine, pilot training cycles, maintenance infrastructure, satellite communications, and battle-tested coordination. These capabilities cannot be improvised during crisis. They're cultivated over generations. The crisis de-escalated without open combat precisely because of that imbalance. China's missile tests signaled intention. The U.S. Navy's presence signaled capacity. In strategic terms, capacity outweighs intention. Internally, Chinese military planners began reassessing assumptions. If direct parity was unattainable in the near term, asymmetry would become the strategy. From this realization emerged a long-term transformation program. Anti-ship ballistic missile development accelerated, culminating years later in systems designed specifically to threaten carrier strike groups at extended ranges. Investments in submarine modernization intensified. Surface fleet construction expanded dramatically. Artificial island construction in the South China Sea would later extend radar coverage and missile deployment zones. But in 1996, those capabilities were still future ambitions. The Taiwan Strait Crisis exposed the gap between regional assertion and global maritime dominance. It underscored that naval supremacy is not defined by proximity to coastline, but by the ability to operate decisively anywhere on the globe. The United States Navy did not require regional superiority. It possessed global reach. For American allies in the region, the transit reinforced confidence in U.S. commitments. For Beijing, it reinforced the urgency of naval transformation. Shipyards expanded output. Naval doctrine evolved. Joint exercises increased in sophistication. Surveillance and targeting networks were prioritized. Over the next 2 decades, China would construct aircraft carriers of its own, expand its destroyer fleet, and pursue blue water capability. Yet structural dominance cannot be replicated quickly. Operational experience accumulates through sustained deployment cycles. Carrier air wings require thousands of training hours. Logistics chains must withstand real-world strain. Communications networks must function under stress. The United States Navy's presence in 1996 reflected not just hardware, but habit, a habit of global operations refined since World War II. The day the U.S. Navy entered the Taiwan Strait was not marked by battle damage or victory parades. It was marked by clarity. It demonstrated that in 1996, control of maritime escalation in the Western Pacific rested firmly with Washington. The long-term consequences reshaped regional strategy. China shifted toward anti-access/area denial doctrine, aiming not to outnumber American carriers, but to complicate their freedom of maneuver. Precision missile development, electronic warfare capabilities, cyber operations, and layered coastal defense systems emerged as strategic counters. The naval rivalry intensified, but it did so within the framework defined that week in 1996. Nearly 3 decades later, the echoes remain. China now fields aircraft carriers and advanced destroyers. Its navy has grown in numerical size. Its missile systems pose credible regional challenges. Yet the fundamental lesson of 1996 endures. Supremacy at sea is demonstrated through integration, endurance, and readiness. The crisis did not prevent China's rise. It accelerated it. It did not end competition. It formalized it. And it proved that in moments of uncertainty, the decisive factor is not rhetoric. It is movement. In March 1996, movement belonged to the United States Navy, and missiles were fired in anger. No ships exchanged fire. No war was declared. And yet, history shifted that week. The Third Taiwan Strait Crisis did not produce headlines of destruction. It produced something far more consequential, a strategic awakening. When American carrier strike groups sailed through the Taiwan Strait, they carried more than aircraft and escort vessels. They carried decades of doctrine, logistics, training, and accumulated operational dominance. They carried the quiet confidence of a navy that had operated across every ocean on Earth. Beijing did not surrender. It did not retreat. It recalculated. The lesson of 1996 was not humiliation. It was clarity. It revealed that maritime power in the modern era is not measured by geography alone, nor by missile demonstrations, nor by rhetoric. It is measured by integration, by endurance, by the ability to project force at distance and sustain it without hesitation. In the years that followed, China began reshaping its navy with deliberate intensity. New destroyers, submarines, aircraft carriers, anti-ship missile systems designed specifically to challenge carrier strike groups. The rivalry deepened. The Pacific became more contested, but the image endures. An American aircraft carrier cutting through contested waters, unchallenged. A transit that redefined escalation without firing a shot. A demonstration that supremacy at sea is not claimed, it is practiced. The day the United States Navy entered the Taiwan Strait was not the end of a confrontation. It was the beginning of a new naval era. And ever since that week in 1996, every ship launched, every missile tested, and every naval doctrine written in the Indo-Pacific has carried the echo of that passage through the strait. Because in the calculus of power, presence changes everything. And in 1996, presence belonged to the United States.